Mythical creatures of ancient Greece. Mythical creatures of ancient Greece. Focus question. What are some mythical creatures of ancient Greece and what do they represent in that culture? Introduction. People in many cultures have myths. Myths are stories that explain important ideas such as good and evil in ways people can understand. A myth can be a lesson, a story about history, or a tale about a natural wonder. It can even be a warning. In ancient Greece, myths were an important part of religion. Fantastic creatures often played a central role in Greek myths along with gods, goddesses, and heroes. Centaurus. Centaurus had the head and chest of a human and the body of a horse. Their animal side was more powerful than human side. To the Greeks, the centaurs were animal-like and driven by their feelings, while the Greeks were civilized. The story of the centaurs began with a Greek king named Ixion. Zeus had allowed Ixion to live on Mount Olympus. Zeus had that Ixion had fallen in love with Hera, Zeus's wife. As a test of Ixion, Zeus created a cloud that looked like Hera. Ixion fell in love with the cloud, thinking it was Hera. The cloud gave birth to the first Centaurus. Zeus punished Ixion by forcing him to spin on a burning wheel forever. Ancient Greeks put pictures of battles showing themselves fighting centaurs and many objects, from drinking cups to stone temples. The Greeks did not often show current events in their art. Rather, they used pictures of myths to show how they felt about what was going on in the world around them. For example, the Greeks connected one of their greatest enemies and Persians with the centaurs. Do you know? The relationship between a guest and his or her host was an important part of ancient Greek culture. The myth about Ixion and the first centaurs shows the importance of this relationship through Ixion's disrespect of Zeus, his host. Zeus's punishment was a lesson about the consequences of breaking these accepted customs. Sirens. Like centaurs, sirens were also hybrid creatures. Sirens were women with his wings, legs, and bodies of birds. They stood for the importance of self-control. They lived on an island in the middle of the sea, where they sang beautiful songs to lure sailors. The sailors would lose control of their ships and crash onto the rocky shores of the island. The myth about the sirens says that they had once been human-made to the goddess Persephone. One day, the god of the underworld took Persephone while she was picking flowers. Their wings helped the sirens search for Persephone. The sirens never found her and settled on the island. The sirens drew many sailors to them, but a few were able to pass them by. One played music so loud that it blocked out the siren's song. Another told the sailors to tie him tightly to his boat. His sailors plugged their ears so they could not hear the song. Being able to avoid the siren's song stood for the strength of will that Greek people valued. Word-wise, the sirens are connected to the word siren, which is a device that gives off a loud warning sound. They also inspired the meaning of a siren song, sometimes so appealing that it makes you want it even if it is dangerous. Medusa. While the sirens were known for their beauty, Medusa was famous for her scary appearance. And ancient Greek artists usually showed the Gorgons, Medusa and her two sisters. With large round heads and huge eyes, they often had snakes instead of hair, pointed tongues sticked out of their mouth. Although Medusa's sisters were immortal, she was mortal. It was possible for humans to defeat him. Medusa had her own defense against attacks, though. She could turn people to stone once they looked directly into her eyes. The myth about Medusa began with an evil king who was in love with the mother of a boy named Perseus. To get Perseus out of his way, the king tricked him into promising he would bring anything the king wanted. The king set Perseus to get the head of Medusa, a deed he thought would be impossible. With the help of gods and goddesses, perhaps Perseus cut off the head of Medusa. Two creatures came out of her body. Some people think the killing of Medusa symbolized the ending of a drought. The creatures stood for the good things that came after, crops and water. Wowzer! The Greeks believed that the frightening faces of Gorgons would protect them and were of evil. They put pictures of Gorgons everywhere, including on their shelves. The Minotaur. The Minotaur was another hybrid creature. It had a bull's head and a man's body. The monster was so scary that it was kept in a maze called the Labyrinth beneath the palace of Minos, where the king of Crete lived. After boys from the city of Athens killed the son of Minos, the king wanted revenge. He began to attack Athens. He agreed to stop if the people of Athens sent 7 boys and 7 girls to the Minotaur. A brave boy from Athens named Theseus volunteered to be one of the victims. When Theseus arrived in Crete, he was put in a cage with the other victims. It was then that the princess of Crete, Ariadne, saw Theseus and fell in love with him. The princess didn't want the Minotaur to hurt Theseus. She asked the man who built the labyrinth how Theseus could escape. She was told that she should give Theseus a ball of yarn to tie to a door. He was to unwind it as he made his way through the labyrinth. She also gave Theseus a sword. After Theseus defeated the Minotaur, he followed the trail of yarn back out of the maze. The Minotaur myth was populous after the Greeks told over Crete. Just as centaurs often symbolized the Persians, bulls stood for Crete. Bulls were sacred to an important goddess in Crete. Some people think that Theseus beating the Minotaur stood for the Greeks taking over Crete. Typhon. The Minotaur was tiny compared to the giant Typhon. It was a monster with wings, snakes for legs, and 100 heads. One man and the rest different creatures. Typhon stood for the harmful forces of nature. Only Zeus, the king of the gods, could match Typhon. Their battle shook the whole world. Zeus set all 100 of the monsters' heads on fire. He then locked Typhons away into earth. The ancient Greeks blamed Typhon for the strong winds that spread across land and the sea during great storms. People were comforted by the idea that Zeus could defeat the natural forces of weather that Typhon represented. Conclusion. The ancient Greeks did not tell stories about mythical creatures simply to entertain or scare people. These creatures and the myths about them had meaning that helped people understand the world around them at the time. While mythical creatures played important roles in ancient Greek culture, they are also popular today. Children and adults are still excited by their amazing stories.